All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know how we get down. Whatever it is you're going through, whatever the challenges is, whatever the obstacles are, whatever it is that may be placed in front of you in life or wherever it is you're trying to go, we're here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. That is what this show has been about from the beginning. Today, I have what I like to call very philanthropic entrepreneur, someone who had an opportunity to kind of be in corporate and kind of just collect the check and all that, but really chose a very philanthropic route towards helping not only himself, but also helping people who really need it, people who are really struggling, people who have lost like homes and stuff like that. He's helping them, figure out how to get their finances together. And I couldn't think of a more appropriate time to be having this conversation, seeing that we're in a political season. And I'm not going to ask you who you're voting for, but I will say, regardless of who you are voting for, one of the things that we as people can always agree on is figure out how to make our finances right, figuring out how we're going to be able to take care of our families, whether it's groceries, gas, all that kind of stuff. So all that being said, Mr. Bob Diamond, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Appreciate you being here. And I appreciate the intro too, because not many people really put that first, where it's the philanthropy along with making great living. Because, it's all well and good to help people and to give money, but you shouldn't do it if you're starving yourself or making your family suffer. That's not cool. So
Exactly.
yeah, I'm on board 100%. But if you're going to do something, spend time on something good. It's going to help people.
It's so important. And to me, it's the great, I heard Tony Robbins say this one time, it's success without fulfillment is a failure, and if you're being a success, you're making your money, but you're not really doing it in an ethical way, you're not doing it in a way in which you're improving lives of others, you have just simply failed. And that is something that a lot of you guys need to grab onto, because even when it comes to the way you look at millionaires, or you look at people that have a lot of wealth, automatically they're being judged because they may have a lot of wealth, so they may have done something wrong. And we're here to debunk that entire myth.
Yeah, that is complete nonsense. And it is very easy to get in that position where you look with envy at someone else.
Yeah.
And you start thinking, well, they must have done something wrong. And really that's, I think, your feelings about yourself, where it's somehow, there must be some reason I wasn't successful. And obviously I'm just more honest. So just, making yourself feel better, but it's not the truth of it. And I think when you're thinking about business, and this is any business and probably all of life, I think you should always look to find the truth of the thing, whatever the truth is, even if it's painful to you personally. It's like, why did that relationship fall apart? Well, maybe you just ignored your girlfriend or your boyfriend for too long. And, maybe you weren't nice to them. Maybe you spent too much time on video games or with your friends or whatever.
Right.
I think you want to see the truth of it, because when you see the truth, that's when you can fix it. It's like if you had a broken arm, you don't want someone putting a plaster cast on your nose, because it won't fix the problem. And you got to accept what the problem is. The other thing that I would say, I love your comment about, Tony Robbins quote. So I think what you want to think about at the beginning is what wall am I putting my ladder against? Like, what's at the top of that? Is the success that I want and the person that I want to be at the top of that ladder or not? So, because you're going to grow into it. And let's face it, you're going to spend time on something, and there are many, many ways to make a lot of money. Yeah. And you just have to pick something that really has the destination that you really want in mind, meaning you're going to get the success you want. I get that. I was young once, just wanting to make money. That's all I wanted to do.
Right.
But I discovered in the end, your satisfaction matters and your self-respect, it matters how you make that money. And I can just offer you assurance. There are ethical, strong, powerful, profitable ways to make money that do not involve selling your soul or getting to the end and feeling like you failed, even though you made your money.
Yes. And I'm glad you broke all that down, because one of the things that I have said constantly is a lot of the financials and learning how to become financially literate, you have to do that on your own. It's not taught in the school. And like you were telling me before we started recording, you grew up in Pennsylvania, and, kind of just to kick things off, can you talk a little bit about what school was like for you, and when how you're able to transition from that into the working world and stuff like that? Because it's just hard to learn it when you're going through the school system. You literally have to have certain people, and you have to see things that makes it so, hey, I got to focus on my fun. I got to do something different.
So they don't teach you anything about financial literacy and management in school. They just don't. And, there's a lot of tussling over what they teach in school these days, whether it's social awareness and activity or whether it's, traditional history and things like that. But whatever it is, it never includes financial literacy, which is really sad because, at the end of the day, that really impacts the quality of your life and the quality of your emotional life. Like, do you feel good about your life? Do you get to the end and you're able to retire and live comfortably, or are you scraping by on Social Security? And so for me, what happened with me is I was a good student. Like, I just kind of did whatever I was supposed to be doing, and I was good at it. So that was all fine. But I was a terrible employee. I am a terrible employee because I'm very inventive. I like to do things differently all the time. I get bored, so I do something in a different way. I'm a terrible cog in a corporate machine, because the corporate machine, you got to do things the same way every time, because that way the machine works. Right. And so, to my surprise, I found that was kind of my first failing in life, that I went to big corporations. I worked for Arthur Andersen, which was a big accounting firm. I worked for Coopers and Lybrand, which is another big accounting firm, in their business consulting divisions. And I hated it. And I wasn't even good at it because it was just dreadful. And then I became a lawyer. And when I went to a big law firm, I was actually good at what I did, but I just refused to participate in the politics and all that. I'm like, I'll just go in, I'll be excellent at my work, and I'll leave. And that was fine, but it was ultimately not going to get me anywhere in that big corporate structure, because that was a 700 lawyer firm and you had to play the politics. And I said, that's not for me. Right. So I recognized it. So I said, you know what, I've got to find the entrepreneurial path for me. And I set out to do that. And I did house flipping. I did real estate development. I did consulting. And I finally landed on this thing that I do now, which is called overages. And it is just an amazing business. And it's a business, just to tell you what it is, because nobody's ever familiar with it. Right. Property gets lost at a foreclosure sale, either tax foreclosure because you didn't pay your real estate taxes, or mortgage foreclosure because you didn't pay your mortgage. When the property sells for more than the debt that's due, that extra money can be claimed by the former homeowner. Because if you think about it, it's kind of like if you sold your house through a regular realtor, you'd go to settlement, you'd pay your mortgage and whatever other expenses you had, then whatever's left over belongs to the former owner, right? Because that's their equity in their house. Just because it was sold at a foreclosure auction doesn't really change any of that. Right. There, you're just paying the expenses of the sale, like the auctioneer. You're paying off the mortgage debt or the tax debt that's due, and the rest of it belongs to you. But here's the problem. The problem is people don't know that. And people that are foreclosed are just down in the dumps. They're feeling terrible. They're distressed. They're depressed. They feel lousy. They have no money, because otherwise they wouldn't have lost their house. Right. And so they kind of slink off trying to find, a place they can afford to live that will take them, because their credit's probably trashed too. Right. And they have no idea that there's money that they're eligible to claim. And sort of predictably, it's not like the government's going to chase you down and say, hey, you're owed some money, take this check. Yeah. They sit there and don't do anything. And if you apply, you get the money. If you don't apply, you don't get the money. It's really simple. And people don't apply because they don't know that there's any money that even could be due to them. Right. And it's not their fault. It's just not a commonly known thing. And maybe this goes to the financial literacy in the world, but they have no idea.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, because when you mention working in a major accounting firm, and then going and being a lawyer, and then deciding, hey, look, I can't do this anymore, I want to do my own thing, and you're flipping houses, where in that process did you make the discovery and realize, hey, there's a lot of money that is just sitting?
This is crazy. It's a good question. This is almost
go ahead.
It's almost embarrassing. So I became an attorney in 1995.
Right.
So a real estate attorney of all things. And I was actively buying places at foreclosure auctions, both tax and mortgage foreclosure. So I was buying places for my house flipping business. Yeah. And I didn't know about overages until 10 years later, until 2005. And if you think about it, if anybody should have known, it would have been me. Yeah. I was a real estate lawyer. I'd been involved in foreclosure since 1989. You'd think I would know, but I didn't. And the reason I didn't know, because I didn't think about it. I'd go to an auction, I'm bidding on properties, hopefully getting a property or two. And I would go off, if I got a property, I'd go call the contractors, get them over there to look for repairs and things like that. I never thought, hey, the county collecting, $10 million selling real estate today. I wonder what they do with that money. I didn't think about it because it didn't involve me. Man, I realized later when a client came into my office who had lost a property in a foreclosure sale, and they said, hey, can you do something? And I said, well, sometimes if there's a technicality, you can undo the sale and then you can pay back the debt and you're okay. So I looked into it and there's nothing. The guy was notified of the sale. He knew about it. There's just no nothing to do to overturn the sale.
Mhm.
So I said to him, I said, but here's the thing, your property sold for about $20,000 more than you owed in taxes. And I think that you should get that money back. This is just thinking about it, because yeah,
Mhm.
they needed their 10 grand to pay the taxes, but it sold for 30. So I think I can get you that extra money. So if you want to hire me to do that, I said, I think I can be successful at that. So why don't we do that? So he said, okay, go try and do that. So this was in the city of Philadelphia. I
Mhm.
went down there. I basically went 4 or 5 times over a 3 month period arguing with them, and they finally just gave me the money.
Wow.
And funnily enough, I mean, Philadelphia was founded in what, 1776 or something, whenever the
Yeah.
Constitution was enacted. That's when we became a country. And I don't think anybody had ever applied for any extra money before, because they were completely confused. And
Right.
they've been doing tax sales since 1776 when the
Hmm.
country started. So that shows you how little known this is.
Yeah.
And then actually, I didn't think of it as a business at that point. I just thought of something
Exactly.
I
That's
did
what I was
for
going to
fun.
ask you. Like, because in 2005, now, when do you able to, are you able to, does it come from a place where you're trying to serve your clients? Like, when did it, like, you're just
Yeah.
starting to,
So I
listen.
good, I got a good result for that client, got him 20 grand. It was all great. And in 5 years later, another client came up to me, and he was an investor in tax deeds and tax liens. And he mentioned this overages business. And I said, what's that? And he said, oh, it's, we get lists of people that are owed money from leftovers from mortgage and tax foreclosure sales. We contact them, let them know there's some money, and for a percentage, we'll go get it. And
Mhm.
my mouth just dropped. I'm like,
Yeah,
wait a
that's like
minute.
basically, yeah, he gave you a future with that. Like, oh, man,
Right. And I'm
that's
like,
the business.
wait a minute. I was like, there are lists. Because I
Yeah.
never thought of his list. I thought of one client came into my office with a problem. So I
Yeah.
fixed it.
Uh-huh.
And he said, oh, yeah, they're lists. And I said, that makes sense, because if they collect all that money, they got to have an accounting, right? You can't just collect millions of dollars and not at least have accounting for it. And so he showed me the business, and I was just blown away, because you're getting people who really have lost everything, and they are flat on their back financially. They are just in bad shape. And you're coming up with this amazing news, at first too good to believe for them, like too good
Mhm.
to be true.
Right.
But you say, no, I'm serious, and we'll do this totally on contingent fee. Like, it doesn't cost you anything up front. If we don't get paid, we don't get money, we don't get anything. And we're never charging you. If we get paid, it's out of the money that we recover. And so why not give it a shot? It could be a big windfall for you.
Mhm.
And so, that's kind of the job one in that business, is
Yeah.
convincing people. But it's a really fulfilling business where you're helping these people get back on their feet. I mean, I had one woman we helped last year. She was in a homeless shelter up in Hartford, Connecticut. She
Mhm.
was just about to time out, meaning they were going to kick her out of the shelter because they were out of space, and she was out of time. And this was on Valentine's Day when I went up to see her. I know this because I had to say to my wife, hey, I have to make a trip on Valentine's Day. My wife said,
Right. Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
But
Just
so
break.
I went to give her the money on Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
and she was going to get kicked out the following Saturday. So I go up there, gave her $32,000 we had gotten, and
Mhm.
she got her life back together. She rented a townhouse, she got herself a car, she got herself a new job, and she got her life back on track. And today she's fine. If she'd been kicked out of a homeless shelter with no money in February in Connecticut, I
Yeah.
don't think she'd be with us today. I think she would have frozen to death on the streets, because it's just,
Yeah.
Connecticut's a cold place in February.
Right. And the thing about what you're doing and why I mentioned it being such a philanthropic point, and I'm curious to hear kind of the overall result of what you're doing, or some people that, when I say result, meaning some resistance that you may feel. And I'll give you an example, because you mentioned Philly and Hartford, Connecticut, but out here in West Palm Beach, one of the things that I actually do is I teach at a school, and they've made me one of the people that, because I have a good driving record and all that, so I go and pick up certain kids, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, there's a situation. I say this to them every single morning. There's a situation where it's a really rundown area. I mean, homelessness. There's people living on couches right next to gas stations. It
Oh,
is a
yeah.
horrible place, right? And this is Palm Beach. So you look maybe 8 miles, maybe literally 8 miles down the road. It's the richest, it's Bon Jovi and Trump and all these people, a lot
Yeah.
of rich people, but 2 blocks, it's a lot of just poverty. But the particular complex in which I pick up one of the students, it's the nicest area. You would not know how bad it is. And I'm thinking to myself, man, somebody that grew up out here in Palm Beach that I work closely with, he was telling me what happened was a place got so bad that they had to make one adjustment. They had to make it so one complex looked halfway decent, but if you look around those surrounding areas, there's a ton of homelessness. So I bring that up because I'm wondering now, when you are working with your clients and you're using this concept, this innovative approach, do you now kind of use the money to develop more real estate so people don't get foreclosed on? Or how does that work? Because normally you see people putting the money into building more buildings that make it look great versus helping the folks that have already foreclosed and they just kind of don't have a pot to piss in.
So I see my clients and the people I'm dedicated to helping is like one at a time. The people who've been foreclosed are homeless or living on someone's couch or living in their mom's basement,
Mm-hmm.
or if they're lucky, have an apartment.
Right.
And so you ever hear that story about the starfish on the beach? Like a dad and a son are walking down the beach, and there are like hundreds of starfish just washed up on the beach,
No,
all
I'm
like
like, tell me this.
bleaching
I
in the
haven't heard
sun.
this one. No, please. Yeah. I haven't
So
heard.
imagine this father and son walking along the beach, just hundreds of starfish that washed up on shore, and they're all like dying. They're dying in the sun. They need to be back in the water. So
Yeah.
the son's picking up starfish and throwing them back in. And
Mm-hmm.
the father's like, son, there are hundreds and hundreds of starfish. We can't save them all. What's the
Yeah.
difference?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the son picks up the starfish, throws it in, and says, made a difference for that starfish.
Yeah.
And so I'm that kid on the beach. I'm just
Yeah.
taking the starfish
It's
because I'll
different.
just give you some numbers, which will give you an idea of the scope of this problem. So every day in America, there are approximately 3,000 properties lost to tax sale. That's according to JP Morgan Chase. So that's their number. So
Mm-hmm.
about 3,000 properties a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we have an internal database of people that need help. It's 14,713 leads, meaning people owed at least $30,000 each.
Right. Yeah.
And it's over $350 million in gross money that's sitting there. And we only cover 15 out of the 50 states. Just because I have a team that gets these leads, I'm like, just stop. Like, don't give us any more leads.
It's crazy.
Because I can't possibly, process even a tenth of what I have.
Uh-huh.
So just stop.
Right.
And that's why I teach it, because people ask me, like, why do you teach it? I want to keep it all to yourself. I'm like, it's an overwhelming problem. When there are 3,000 tax sales a day, I can't even begin to keep up with that. And by the way, the money typically sits around for about 3 years before it forfeits to the government. So
Right.
there's this backlog of 3,000 a day
Yeah.
that's built out for the past 3 years.
Hmm.
And every day, like today, some claims will time out, meaning they'll just be seized by the state and kept
By the government. Right. Right.
by the government, and new ones will come in. And so what I made a really business decision. And I said, you know what? I love teaching. I'm good at it. Let me just teach people how to do this. It could conceivably make some competition for me, but that's so far removed, because we're talking about 3,000 tax sales a day. And for mortgage foreclosures, it's about 500,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't convert that to daily in my mind, but that's a couple thousand a day. So I'm like, we're so far from this being like even competitive. I'm like, I can just teach people. And
Right.
for me, I take a little bit of personal satisfaction. Like if you get a claim and you help somebody get back on their feet or get what they're entitled to, I get happy about it. To me, it's just, it's like I educated you and then you helped other people, and I'm fulfilling my purpose. To me, that is my purpose, is to be
Yes.
here and leave the place better than I found it.
Yes, and I'm as a teacher, it is very gratifying to hear you say that that's the direction you took the company and that's the direction you took the business, because I'm glad that I'm reaffirming what I say all the time is everyone's a teacher. Every single person, doesn't matter what you are, you have the ability to teach, and it's your role. At your best, you are always a teacher. And when you become a teacher, what you start to see is that there's certain students that are ready to learn. There's certain clients that are ready to learn. There's certain people that, hey, maybe they ran into some bad times and they lost their home, but hey, if I get another opportunity, I'm going to make the most of it. And I'm bringing that up because I'm curious now is, have you developed a filtration system? Have you developed a system where now people who say, hey, look, Bob, I want this, and I'm not gonna have you regret. I'm not gonna, get this money that you make me and then go do what I did to lose or whatever that is. I'm gonna put it into something productive, like you mentioned, the lady have a car, got her life back on track, and things like that. Is there some sort of a way where you make it so these are the people I'm working with, and these are the people that, hey, I don't, how do you maneuver that kind of
So
that?
I think that I'm only moderately good at that. So what I came down with was basically not judging people, because some of the people that I help were in jail.
All right.
For
You took me to it. Like, that's what I'm saying. I could see certain situations kind of going
I
in the
think about it. You go to jail, you're not going to pay your real estate taxes. How would you even do it? Like, how would you even mechanically do it? And if you have no friends or family that are around to take care of it, those get lost. So that's a minority of people I deal with, but
Right.
sometimes it's people that are in jail. A
Mhm.
lot of times it's honestly people that have mismanaged their life and really mismanaged their life. And because you think about it, the only house where there's going to be an overage had to be worth a lot more than the tax bill, right? Because it's got to sell for much more than the taxes. And
Yes.
what they could have done and really should have done is sold the house once the reality was that they couldn't pay to keep the house. They
Mhm.
should have sold it, taken their equity, and just gone on to whatever their next thing is. But they didn't. So, so I think almost universally, one of the problems that the people I deal with have is just they get paralyzed. They don't take care of the business and life.
Mhm.
There's a saying that I heard the other day that I'll bet you'll love. I loved it. So it's that money loves speed, wealth loves time, and poverty loves indecision.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is such a good, I'm like
Another
adopting that one.
exclusive here on the Move Swiftly podcast, and it fits so well with the whole name. Money loves speed,
Yes,
loves time, and poverty just loves indecision because that's it right there. It's the indecision that leads to so many decisions, so many. And I hate to bring it up again, but that's what the school system teaches. That's what happens. That's what you've done when you send a kid off to college and you give them about 50 different majors to choose from, or when you say, oh, you're not smart enough to get into this school this year, but you go to community college and all of a sudden you become smart. When you give people so many options, too often do we leave them with this indecisive nature about them. And you have to, again, you run into people like you that teach us, hey, be decisive. Whatever it is you're going to do, make sure your heart's in it, make sure you feel it, and you're decisive when you move because indecision, like you just said, is going to lead to some very, very ugly realities for you. I know
that
that.
is it. That's why I love that saying. I wanted to share with you because the name of your podcast, I have to give this to you because this is just the
Right.
best thing. And it's so true. It is so absolutely true. And I'm like that. And I would say that most of my clients fall in the indecision category
Mhm.
and they get a bad result. Now, I always assume, you can improve over time. I know I thought some dumb things in the past. I probably think some dumb things now I think are right,
Mhm.
but you can grow as a person if you try. If you do the work, you think about things, maybe take a Tony Robbins class, you do things like that, you
Mhm.
truly can become better, but you have to do it. You can't, like, life is not a spectator sport. It's a
Exactly.
participatory sport.
Right.
So I get lots of people that are indecisive, but I don't judge them. I'm just like, I can help them. I'm moving, like, it's like the starfish. I toss it back in the water. I don't know if it's going to wash back up again or if it's too dumb of a starfish and it's going to crawl back in the beach again and
Get
bleach
back
out
to.
and die.
Yeah.
I tried, right? It's like I call people and lots of them won't sign up. Like I'll call people and I say, hey, we found a refund that's about $50,000 that you're owed. We're happy to go pursue that for you. No cost to you.
Mhm.
If we're successful, then we get a percentage. If we're not successful, then it doesn't cost you a penny. Would you like to try? A lot of people just won't even listen. They're just like, no, it's a
Program.
scam. Click.
Exactly. Hey, me beat me to it, but they're programmed to think like that, and that's where again a lot of the ways you think and the ways we've been trained to think, especially in these times. And again, I hate to get too political here, but I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside of DC, and so much of it is about learning to protect your own assets, learning to protect your own self. Then, regardless of the party, regardless of the politician, it's only at that point where they're going to do anything for you. But for you, you have to do your own research. You have to be willing to help yourself. And then these politicians will come in and maybe help a cause that you're a part of, or create a policy or something like that. But no one's helping you individually unless you're really wanting to help yourself. So,
They're not. I think
exactly. So
that's
good.
great. That's great insight and great advice. You can't rely on the government to fix your own personal problems. Like they have overall responsibility.
Yeah.
Like here's just an example. So we just had this strike with the longshoremen. And it
Hmm.
was really going to jack things up. And like I live in Puerto Rico, so everything comes in by boat. I'm like, oh no, we can really get in
Yeah,
trouble here
that is
pretty
true. Oh,
fast.
yeah, that is true. Right. Yeah, because you're right there.
So
Yeah.
we need, for example, the electricity on the island runs from diesel fuel, which comes on boats. If you don't have diesel fuel getting loaded up in the United States and shipped here, guess what? We'll have no electricity. We'll
Hmm.
have no water because the water pumping stations won't work. And
Right.
we'd have like society falling apart in 2 weeks. And we'd have no food in the stores because you can't get it here. So it would be a disaster.
Exactly.
And the government like needs to deal with things like that. Like, I'm not going to get political, but for example, somehow Biden and the crew over there, they talked to the longshoremen and at least got another couple months for people to go talk. Now you could say the cynic could say, well, they pushed it off till after the election because in January it's going to happen again, but at least they did something. And I think they're doing their job. And I think that's good. But as far as like fixing your day-to-day problems, that's not the right party to rely on. It's just not. I don't care whether you're a Republican or Democrat or in between.
Exactly.
It's just not. They're not going to solve your life problems. And if you think that, you're going to get a lot of lessons that that's not true. That's what I would say.
Some hard lessons too, really, really hard lessons. And, Bob, I do want to be very respectful of your time. And I do want to give you the opportunity a little bit too, to talk about how do you envision this thing growing? How do you, what's next? You've built a business that you're able to teach others to do the same. So if you were to, move on and, maybe enjoy retirement, enjoy Puerto Rico or whatever, how do you see this thing building out as you continue to grow?
So my plan is not to retire. I don't have an interest in retiring. I'd like to get my business organized a little better so it's less reliant on me. But I organize my whole life around like activity, meaning like being productive and doing something I'm proud of.
Yes.
So if I weren't working at this, I'd just work at something else. And I just realized that about myself. I think it's good to know yourself. So, if I say retired and did nothing, I'd be terribly bored. Like I know on days when I have nothing to do, I just like the longest day in the world. It's like, I get up at 8 or 7 in the morning. I'm like by 8 at night, I'm just crawling out of my skin. I find real satisfaction at like doing something productive and helping people. Like I'll just give you an example. I had another client recently, a crazy case. And this will give you a flavor for how people get in this trouble. So this woman's grandmother dies and no one ever pays the real estate taxes. So the house gets lost at a tax sale and there's about $35,000 left over. So we sign up this woman's father, and the woman was 17 at the time. So maybe I should be calling her a young lady, but whatever. She's 17. We sign up her father because he's the only descendant of the grandmother who passed away. So he gets the money. And so he hires us. We're working on the claim. These things usually take 3 or 4 months to actually get a check out of the government. So in that 3 or 4 months, the idiot overdoses and dies. So I just call him an idiot because he's an idiot for doing that. So he overdoses and dies, leaves behind his 17-year-old daughter with nobody.
But that's what I was about to ask. What happened to the 17-year-old girl? She's by herself.
She's by herself, just finishing up high school. She was a high school senior. So, once we figured out he had died, then we just did our research, figured out they had a daughter, talked to her. She had a court-appointed guardian. So we talked to the guardian and said, look, we're close to getting this $34,000. So we just need the guardian now to just sign, approving that we're going to continue working on this. Right. So we did that. By the time we got the money, she turned 18. So the guardian was gone. So I called her up and said, hey, look, Linda, which was her name. I said, Linda, we have this money and it's just come in. So it needs a day or two to clear my account. That we're ready to send you your balance. Just out of curiosity, like, do you have any plans?
Okay.
Not that I have any legal, say it's her money, so I have to give it to her. But I just said, out of curiosity, do you have any plans? And she said, well, yeah. She said, I'm graduating from high school and I need a place to live. And she said, I want to go to cosmetology school and get my licensing. And I said, so what are you doing? She said, well, I'm doing nails, but I do it like under the table now, so I can't make much money. But she said, when I actually have my license, I can make some good money. And someday I want to own a beauty salon. And I was like, there's this 17-year-old girl who's been through so much. I mean, her grandmother dies, who she was close with. Her grandmother dies. And then her dad ODs. Her mother was nowhere to be found. Her mother had abandoned the family many years ago. So no one even knew where she was. And I'm just like, but the fact that she had a dream and a vision, I was really inspired. I was like, this is like God's work where I'm helping someone who just has been just kicked really hard in multiple ways. Lost her grandmother, lost her dad, her mom's who knows where. And she's still got a dream. And I'm like, that girl is going to make it. And so what we did with that one, and I'm just going to say this because for people in the business who do this from time to time, we just waived our fees and gave her all the money. Because I was like, it's $34,000. She would have ended up with about $23,000 if we'd charged fees on it. I was like, this girl's got to get a place to live, got to pay for the cosmetology school. She needs to get a car. even the 34,000 is not quite enough for all of that, but it'll be, pretty good.
Right.
So I just said, let me just waive, I said to her, we're not going to charge our fee. And the funny thing about this that would probably entertain you, but maybe be familiar, is she's like, no, no, I don't want you to do that. And she was suspicious that I was like wanting something from her.
Yeah. Because she's
And
been broken. Like there's so many things. I've known women like that in situations, and whenever somebody tries to do something good for them, it's hard for them because they're so used to things going bad. You know what I'm saying? They're so used to things going bad. And when someone like you, and like I was telling you guys at the beginning, when you have this philanthropic tone or philanthropic business, you want to help people, and
yes,
you gotta understand everybody's not. There are good folks out there. You just got to be willing to listen. And I could see her saying exactly what you're like. Look,
she was doing that.
I don't want to be any scam. I'll pay the fee. She may just feel like she needs to pay something because of all you're able to do for her. You just saved their life, literally saved their life, because you're going down this road. You have this dream, but the minute you step out your doors, the minute you see a reality, that's it. It's over.
So it's funny you say that, because I guess I had an intrinsic sense of it. Because what I said to her, I said, well, look, how about this? I said, when you open your salon someday in the future, send me an invitation. I really want to come and see it. I said, I'd be so happy to have my little part in it. And I said, the second thing is, when you run into someone in your future, which you will, that's in a bad position, like you are now, in a really tough position, help
Mhm.
them and
Yeah.
help them, and don't charge them anything. Just help them to help them. And I said, that's what you can do for me. It's just pass it on. And when you open your spa, I want an invitation for the grand opening. And so I gave her something she could do. You know what I mean? Like I gave her
Exactly.
a bill, so to speak. Her bill was an invitation for the grand
Okay.
opening. And
Better follow your dreams. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And so, what's the best way if people want to reach out to you and get in touch with you? Where do you normally send them? What's the avenue you
so
send them
you could do two things. You can go to bobdiamond.com,
to? Mhm.
which is just a website. There it's me. There I talk about the overages business. If you want to explore it further, you can see a presentation that I did that's about 90 minutes or so, where I really get into detail. And I would say this business is really good for someone who wants to have a business where they make a difference, but where you could also make great money. Because I'm not a believer in being broke. When I was young, I was
Oh,
broke. I mean, I
that's
was a
really
little
fine.
kid.
I
We
know
were
that's
broke,
hell no,
and
that's not a good
not a
thing
believer.
because you can't help people. You can't. I mean, you cannot help people by
Yeah.
being broke. Jay-Z is that I can't help the poor if I'm one of them. So I got rich and gave back. That's the win-win. You can't help
Yes. And
people.
you just, but I have to tell you, one thing I find is that the motivated people are those people that when they're younger, that money was the problem. Like for me, it was like we couldn't really turn the heat on in the house. It was always cold in my house. It just bothered me to no end. Our heat would be set to like 64. And
Uh-huh.
for me, that is like frigid, freezing.
That's it.
I'd
That's
be wearing
it. Yeah.
sweaters in the
I mean,
house.
and that's Pennsylvania, man. That's yeah. That's
And we just, my parents were great, but the only arguments they ever really had were over money.
money.
And so I felt really guilty. Like when I needed like shoes or cleats for playing a sport, it
Mhm.
would cause these fights in my family. So I'd never wanted anything. Like I just became someone like, I don't want anything. Like I would try to do little things like shovel someone's walk when it snowed, anything to
Mhm.
pay my own way. And, I realized that when I was like 7. It's really hard to pay your own way when you're 7. But
Yeah.
for me, the way that translated was as I got older, I'm just like, I'm going to make it. Like I'm going to do what I have to do.
Mhm.
And for me, my way of being successful is I'm like a woodpecker, and I just like peck, 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 peck. I don't
Mhm.
think I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm reasonably smart, but
Yeah.
I'm the most determined. I mean, you put me up with determination, I'll win a gold medal.
There we
And
go.
what I found, that determination is really like a superpower. If you got determination and real motivation,
Mhm.
you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. You don't have to be the most beautiful person. You don't have to be the best. But
Mhm.
if you'll just show up and work at it every day,
Yeah.
you may try this and that doesn't work quite right. Then you try that, then that, then that. But then you hit on something. And all of
Mhm.
a sudden people are saying, oh my gosh, you're a genius. You're this success.
Mhm.
It's not that. It's just you're the woodpecker, man. You're just pecking at that wood. And then you get a little worm out of there.
Yep.
The people are like, that tree is too hard. You can't peck at that. I'm like, yes, I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
it becomes a lifestyle. And that point you just made, when you hit that thing, when it actually connects, it's almost like that hammer hitting that coffin. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful
yes.
thing.
And it
So
also,
it is such a beautiful moment.
and you were talking about like indecision and too many decisions. And I agree with you. I think that's a really great insight that, like 50 majors, what is a kid doing? They're 17, 18 years old, bewildered.
Right.
And they're like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? You're like, I don't know.
Right.
Nothing.
Right. That's right. That's the mindset. That's why college, man, college gets such a, it's, again, I'm never gonna tell you not I think you need to be educated, but do not go to school unless you know exactly what it is you're doing. Don't be that person that's just going to, go and, check a box just to say you're there. Make sure you're very intentional and understand that the competition, the amount of people around there, you have got to be intentional. It's too much going around in the real world if you're just out there doing, just kind of going either day by day.
So I can give you my take on that and maybe some good, hopefully helpful advice for people. The first thing I would say is that when faced with too many things to decide between, just pick one. Just pick one. Throw a dart at a dartboard if you want to. There's an old story about Harvard did a study with monkeys and darts, and they would throw darts at the stock charts, and that was how they picked the stocks. And they made like a fake portfolio, but they made a portfolio. It did better than the majority of professional stock pickers. Monkeys throwing darts. So I would say, just throw your dart, because you can only score if you throw a dart. The ones who don't score are the indecisive, which again, poverty does love indecision. Just make a decision. It's not going to be perfect. You don't have enough information for it to be perfect. But if you start down the path, it's like you start there and maybe you're like, oh, this wasn't quite it, but I met some good people and they pointed me this way. And you get this zigzag and then you get to something good. It's just when you sit still, you don't get anywhere. You never get to anywhere good. You just sit still and it's terrible. So that's the first thing I'd say, is just do something. The second thing that I think is an alternative to college that I think is really cool, and this I just got recently looking back in my life. If you have someone who's really good at a business, like when I was young, I had a franchise for a company called College Pro Painters that was run by a guy named Charlie Chase, who's just a business genius, really sharp. I learned so much from him in the 2 years that I worked with him that I realized that the value of having like mentoring and working with someone who's really talented in business is incredible. And the other thing is, that's the person that isn't going to say, oh, do you have a degree from, Harvard or Yale or whatever? They know you and know that you work. All you have to do is work and get things done. And if you work and get things done, people will give you more stuff to do. And someone like that. And I would say partner up with someone who's really good. I don't care if they own the local car dealership, if it's like my guy, Charlie Chase, that owned the painting master franchisor for the painting business. These people are all over the place and they're looking for people to mentor and help. Now your fee for doing that is you got to go in there and work hard and do a good job and listen and learn and apply. But that is the most valuable thing you could do, because you'll learn from someone who's actually in there in the field. And what those people end up doing is later on, they're like, hey, it's like Charlie had offered me this at the end. I should have taken it. I didn't, but he said, yeah, I want to open up on the West Coast. Would you be interested in heading up, College Pro Painters in California? And I was like, no, I want to kind of stay here. I'm going to go off and get this professional job, like this clean, wearing a tie kind of job.
Right.
And I just realized I really missed a big opportunity there. Now I've done fine without it, but I just realized that those things happen throughout my life where I'd meet someone who's really great. I got along with, it wasn't a struggle to go to work for Charlie every day. He was a great guy. And he was really talented. And there's so much you can learn just by being in the room. Exactly. It's like, you're not reading a manual. It's just, I'm there in meetings with Charlie. I'm there. Hey, Charlie, we got this problem. What do you think we should do? He thinks through the problem, says, here's what I think. This is what you should do. This are the likely outcomes. And then you go and try, and, then you go back, say, hey, Charlie, this sort of worked, but not really. And you just absorb that learning. And, it's not that you're asking someone to mentor you for free. You go and work for them, even if it's a low level job. You're like cleaning the copier room, whatever. It's just when you do an excellent job, and I'm sure you recognize this, when you do your job with excellence and enthusiasm and just go do it, people just give you more stuff to do. And they don't ask, like, oh, could you have 5 references? Because they don't need a reference. They know you. And I think anybody could be successful that model. And I think some people I know have actually gone in and volunteered. They'll say, look, I know I don't really qualify, but could I just come in, part-time and just help you out? I promise I won't bother you. I'll get work done. Just give me a try. Give me a chance.
Yes. And the thing is,
And
you just mentioned the right thing. It's being a problem solver. And actually, you'll love this example too, because speaking of driving but this is a new service, is driving the bus because we're a brand new private school. But just two situations actually where I had to drop a kid off, and the parent said, "Hey, it's okay if you leave him with somebody else," but that's a clear no-no for us personally, unless we have the call and confirm and get their ID and all that. And what it was myself and another colleague, what we did is we take a picture with the kid and the person, call the parent, and then they confirm just to avoid anything. And that is a problem that we solved right there on the spot. That's why, again, you get the owner, the CEO of the school that says, okay, forget about, I'm not certified to be a teacher at all, but we're going to give these people more work because we know they're going to be my problem solvers. So if I can offer anybody any advice, go fix that problem that you genuinely care about.
yes.
Keep fixing it, keep fixing it. People are going to recognize you. They're going to give you the work that you deserve, that you want, and you will ultimately become very fulfilled. Because if you see this, if you're watching this on video, see his background, you see him in Puerto Rico, the sun is shining. He's just simply fixing people's problems all day. And he got
And
really,
I'll
got
share an
really,
exact example of that I'm doing right now. So Puerto Rico is lovely. Like I'll just show you. This is my backyard. Is
yeah.
this? So
No,
that's
I
the
will be there too, by the way.
you
So
come visit when you're
yeah, I
down.
will come visit.
So this is the Bob Diamond backyard. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's all great. Um, but and it's a product of solving problems. But we got a big problem here, which is we have the world's worst medical care. I mean, it's just really horrible. In our community, we have a hospital that's sometimes staffed, and it's great when it's staffed. Sometimes there's nobody there, and you don't know. If you go to the emergency room, you have no idea what doctors are there or aren't there. And if they're not there, you could sit there. I had a friend who sat for 8 hours with no treatment
Oh
and
my God.
eventually died because of it. 44 years old, he just died because
Oh,
he didn't get medical treatment.
oh no.
So, so in the community, people are like, we got to solve this problem. How can we fix it?
Yeah.
And it's proved really difficult. So I decided, although I'm completely unqualified to fix a medical problem, I mean, I'm a real estate lawyer and a businessman. You do not want me giving you medical treatment.
Don't
But I'm
worry.
like, problem has to be solved. So I want to solve it. So I started just talking to people and saying, hey, here's our problem. Do you have any thoughts? And I ran into doctors and medical administrators, all giving me their input. And I started to get on top of it a little bit. And I finally ran into a guy who took over the local community emergency room. And I talked to him and I said, hey, I've got a proposal for you. Could I raise money to help your emergency room run better? Because the big problem here is that Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements are 40% less than the lowest reimbursement in the United States. So it's Mississippi minus 40%. So if they pay $100 in Mississippi, they pay $60 in Puerto Rico. And it's
Oh,
literally not enough money to hire the
oh,
doctors and nurses you need. It's a
yeah,
disaster.
that is a
So,
disaster. Yes.
so I live in a very, very wealthy community full of entrepreneurs. And I said, I will go and like pass the hat, do a fundraiser for you. I said, and I'll help you refit the emergency room, like get a CT scan machine.
Right.
And more importantly, get you a supplementary budget, like maybe an extra 2 or 3 million a year, where you can actually hire enough doctors and enough nurses and pay them enough to do their jobs. And, would you be up for that? And as you imagine, it's a pretty easy offer to say yes to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, all right, I got to start raising some money. So I started talking to some people about that. And there's a guy who runs the equivalent of Tiger 21. Tiger 21 is like an association of CEOs that run like big small businesses, like say make 20, 30, 40, 50 million a year in revenue.
Yeah.
So they might make, 10 million a year in profits. So big, but a big business. And they're young CEOs that are trying to figure it out. So there's a group here with 75 of them, and they heard about what I was doing. They invited me to come and pitch their group on contributing to this effort. So I get 75 people running businesses of between 20 and 50 million a year that I get to go pass the hat around. And for me to raise a couple $1 million from them is not out of the realm. It's doable. Exactly. The other thing here in Puerto Rico is that for us expats like me that live here, even though we're from and citizens of the US, we have to give a donation of between $5,000 and $10,000 a year, depending on when you came here, to some charity. So we have about 1,800 homes in our community, and I figure about 900 of them are expats. So I've talked to people and say, hey, end of the year is coming. If you haven't given your 5 or 10 grand, could I have it? Because I want to fix our local emergency room.
Yeah.
And now I will tell you, I'm completely unqualified on paper to be doing this.
Yes.
But through determination, I'm completely qualified because I'm just telling people, look, here's what I've done. I've got this agreement with the emergency room to help provide extra budget for them annually and an upfront thing.
Right.
And another guy gave me an idea. We'll also buy an ambulance because we don't have an ambulance, which is ridiculous. But
Right.
that's a story for another time. But so it's like 175,000. So I'm just going to go past the hat. And if you think about it, I have 900 households that have to pay between 5 and 10,000 a year into a charity every year. If I could get 300 of those to give me, 10 grand, I've got 3 million.
Exactly.
Which I don't think is out of the question because it's like your life may depend on it. So give me your 10 grand. They have to give to some charity anyway.
Right.
And the other thing that happened was, I had to get a charity together, which again, I know nothing about nonprofits. I know all about for-profits.
Mm-hmm.
So I started asking around, doing my usual networking, and another guy contacted me. I didn't know him real well. And he said, hey, I want to let you know, I have a charity that you can use if you want to use my charity to run your project. And he runs a charity called Dorado Cares, where he said it's set up to be an umbrella where when someone in the community has a worthwhile project, they can use our infrastructure, meaning our 501c3 and which is the nonprofit certification, and the Puerto Rican equivalent. We do the accounting, we do the bookkeeping, we do all legal compliance work, and we don't charge anything. Like there's no overhead at all. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not charging anything for my charity, which means if you give me a dollar goes to the medical problem. Mm-hmm. That makes it easier for me to pitch the whole thing. Because if people are like, what's in it for you? I'm like, right. Good medical care for me and everybody else in the community is what's in it for me, but no money.
Yeah. And you're actually saving lives. I literally had a recent situation. I wrote an article. I'll probably do a full podcast episode about this, but I wear this pink, breast cancer awareness bracelet. I lost my grandmother to breast cancer, and
sorry to hear that.
One of my dreams was to work for an NFL franchise before 30, and I did get the job with the Dolphins at 28, but it was on the football side. It was on the foundation side, the fundraising side. And one of their flagship events is the Dolphins Cancer Challenge, where we raise millions of dollars every year for the Sylvester Center for Cancer Research. All the money goes there. And I was at the bar watching some football this weekend, and a lady approached me and she goes, hey, I saw this. I just actually survived it. And it was the Sylvester Cancer Center that was treatments and all that stuff. And, when I hear you say stuff like that, it reminds me of the actual person, like your friend, again, condolences with your friend that is going through whatever they're going through. You're actually saving that person's life. And the big takeaway, and I want to make sure I'm on the record saying this as well, is you as a listener, you can do your part. You won't, like the story you shared about the starfish. Yes, you won't change the world by yourself, but you can damn sure do your part. Do your part, whatever that part may be. And you just never know whose life you actually are saving.
It's so true. And it's also like if you help, say during your life, 5 people.
Right.
And those 5 people help 5 people. That's, you start out with 5, you get to 25. They help 5 people, you're at 125. Mm-hmm. They help 5 people, you're now, 5 times 125, it's at 625. Mm-hmm. Next iteration is over 3,000 or over, it'd be close to 3,000. My point is, even if you don't do that much, like you really sincerely help 25 or 5 people during your whole lifetime, which isn't a lot to ask over 80 years.
Exactly.
It just blossoms and mushrooms.
Yeah. And that's the way society should work. I wish it would work like that. I wish we can get away from all the political fighting and the constant tug of war and the contradictions. Who said this and who said that? If we just simply focus on the helping your fellow citizen, regardless, your fellow man, things would blossom in the way we're talking about now.
Yeah, in a positive way. And it's not that much. Like you figure your life expectancy is about 80 years. Mm-hmm. If I said just help 5 people over that time, help 8, it's 1 a decade. How's that?
Right.
Think about the multiplication effect. Because like, for example, you as a teacher, I think for a lot of kids who are growing up in tough circumstances like that, one person that cares about them, like one teacher that pays attention and says, you have potential, the people that tell you you have no future, you're an idiot, you're bad, are not right. That can be the difference in their entire life. Just one person.
Absolutely. One. That's how quick it is, man. So, Bob, I want to, like I said, I do want to be very respectful of your time. And so the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are back to being an attorney. You are working in this the accounting firm. You're
No, don't make me do it.
yeah, pretend that that version of Bob has, clicked into the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Don't let yourself or anyone else tell you can't do it. And I would say that for most people, you are the one that stands in the way of your own progress far more than anything external. It's not the government. It's not who the president is.
Hmm.
It's not any of that. You have so much control over your life. It may take a little time, but if you just keep trying different things, then you'll get to where you want to get to. The worst, and we'll go back to the saying I was talking about.
Yes.
Money loves speed, wealth loves time, and poverty loves indecision. And if you're sitting there in a place of indecision, you can't be successful in anything. I mean, you can't be successful in relationships. If you never asked the girl out or you never smiled at the guy, you can't have the relationship. You just can't, because it will never happen, because you didn't take the step and like step out of your comfort zone a little bit and give it a try. And, as they say, all great journeys start with one small step. Don't be afraid to try. And if people have told you can't do it, you got to do the work, do whatever self-improvement work you have to get over that. And then just get to getting to it. And, I could tell you from my life, the things you can do will surprise you and amaze you and delight you if you actually do it. Like, I'm going to solve the medical problem. On any paper, I'm completely unqualified to solve it, but I'll solve it just because I kept working at it.
Yeah.
It's been 6 months of pecking away at this tree. And finally I'm pecking through and getting myself a worm, which is going to be medical care for our community. And, you are so powerful if you just apply yourself. And that is the key. You just have to do it. And especially don't stand in your own way. It's just unnecessary and it's incorrect. And don't do that.
A closed mouth does not get fed. All right. I appreciate you, Jeff. I'm so looking forward to, connecting with you, man, staying a part of your journey and all that good stuff. And like I'll put all the links to get in touch with you in the show notes as well. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.